Technology is wonderful. Hello, Zoom. Here you go.
Perfect. Good. And now, how's that? No echo? Oh, wonderful. And now I'm going to sit down. Yeah. Look, thank you for coming. I'm Donnelly Moulton, and I'm a board member of SCANS. I'm delighted to have you, and just wanted to say that in honor of our talk today, we specifically requested cooler weather outside, so you can thank Sharon for that. Yeah. Welcome here and welcome to everyone on Zoom. We're so glad you can join us. And I think I'm also correct in saying that we are recording this so you can go at any time that you'd like to the SCANS website and share this presentation, view it again. We always like to start with a land acknowledgement. And we would like to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory covered by the treaties of peace and friendship. We are all treaty people. So now a little bit of a word about SCANS, because I know many of you are members and some of you are not, although I'm sure that will change after today. So we really have two goals, and they're very simple, but they're very ambitious. First of all, we'd like you to be able to learn, and we'd like you to be able to learn in a way that is fun and interesting and engaging. And so here comes the sales pitch, right? But you knew this was coming. We have timed this particular presentation so that it is in advance of the courses coming up. Many of the courses will start next week following Thanksgiving, and we have lots of courses. We've got the science of what we eat. We've got women and jazz. We've got the atomic bomb. We've even got a course that will answer the question, is punctuation passé? Now I say, really, does it get any better than that, right? I believe that our registration online has effectively closed, but we never say no to anybody who wants to be a member or register as long as the class isn't full. So all you have to do is give us a call and we'd be delighted to welcome you to the fold. At this point, I'm going to do a few little logistics. So Sharon will speak up here and I'll lay out the format in just a second. But if any of us have to go to the washroom, it's right straight back that way. And for fire reasons, just to point out the exits, one exit there and one exit there. The easiest thing is just to follow me. I'll go first. And then you can just come right and we'll be all set, right? So here's what we're going to do this afternoon. Sharon, whom I'm going to introduce in just a minute, is going to speak for probably 45 minutes, at which point we will move into a break, roughly 15 minutes. And because Sharon is talking about Nunavut, she has very kindly brought us a number of examples and samples. She's going to be showing them to you, explaining them to you, but she's also going to invite you to come up and look at them for yourself. And for those on Zoom, we will get you as close to those as we possibly can via the camera. So we'll have a lovely little break, at which point you can also take a look at everything that we have up here. And at that point, we'll come back and resume and we'll open it to questions. So we'll hold questions until after the break. You may find that a lot of your questions get answered in the presentation. All right. So now I will officially introduce Sharon Reashore to you. So Sharon and I have known each other for about 20 years. Yeah, we were 20, right? When we met, that's so you'll notice they all laughed, right? So Sharon says that she grew up in a family that had so many soapstone carvings, it was inevitable that she would land up north. Before landing up north, where she worked for 5 years in an ombudsman role, she worked as an advocate in a number of capacities. She advocated for caregivers. She has a background in law. She has worked with government and she has supported nonprofit organizations. So she's here today to tell us what it was like for her to move to Nunavut, to a new community, a new territory, and obviously a new culture and a new way of living. And she's going to share that with us visually as well as with a PowerPoint presentation. So I am at this point going to turn it over to Sharon, who you'll notice doesn't have to hold this thing. Not that I'm bitter. Sharon.
Thank you very much, Donnelly. Try again. All right, let's try again. So thank you, Donnelly, for that introduction. I believe I was 15 when we met, but details. Welcome, everyone, here in Hope Hall, and also welcome to you folks who are joining us on Zoom. Thank you very much for being here today. The first thing I want to do before I begin is acknowledge that I can ramble when I'm giving a presentation. And so to spare you that, for a few of my slides, I'm going to read from notes, but it won't be for all of them, I promise you. I really can, I'm quite capable of boring you to tears, so it's much better this way. The purpose of my presentation today is to raise awareness and understanding of the Inuit and Nunavut. Often, the media shows, well, their stories are about the social challenges in Canada's far north, such as food insecurity and the high suicide rates. And all of that is true, but it's only part of the story. Oh, I don't have to do that, do I? Thank you. Okay. So during our time together today, I'm going to give a bit of context of why I ended up in Nunavut. I'm going to make brief comments on the history of the territory. I'm going to show you some geographic elements and compare them, place them with the rest of Canada and in the circumpolar north. I'm going to talk about the demographics in terms of population and age distribution of the territory. Of course, I'll talk about the climate. I'll talk about the polar night and the midsummer night. The languages of Nunavut, I'll explain, and I make brief comments on the politics and governance, which is unique as compared to the provinces. I brought with me today some artifacts to showcase the arts and culture of Nunavut Inuit. And as Donnelly mentioned, during the break, you will be invited to come up and get a hands-on look at them. After the break, I'm going to talk about shopping, which is the part of daily life in Nunavut, which is the most unique as compared to the rest of Canada. And then there will be time for questions, as Donnelly mentioned. Since this is a hybrid presentation online and in person, I felt it would be best to have the questions all together at the end rather than interspersed throughout the presentation. Let's see if I can get this to work. Yes, excellent. So can everyone see the slides okay? That's me on your left. These three pictures are all of the winter because that is most of the time in Nunavut. My journey to Nunavut began indirectly through my family, as Donnelly mentioned. Growing up, we had Inuit dolls and carvings in our home because a family member worked at a tuberculosis sanitarium and received the items as gifts from patients. So as a bit of background, in the 1950s and 60s, there were very high rates of tuberculosis amongst the Inuit in the Arctic. Tuberculosis, as you know, is a highly infectious respiratory illness. At the time, the Canadian government felt that the best way to treat Inuit with tuberculosis was to bring them south to specialized treatment centers. Recently, there have been many media stories about the TB sanitaria because Inuit have come south looking for the graves of their family members that didn't make it back home. This is a really complex chapter in Canada's history, and it's not the focus of this presentation. But if you are interested in learning more, I recommend this book called Nobody Here Will Harm You. Mass Medical Evacuation from the Eastern Arctic, 1950 to 1965. This book was written by Sean Salway. Full disclosure, Sean is my brother. Anyway, as a result of family involvement, I became aware of the far north early on. Eventually, another family member moved to Nunavut to work, and I was encouraged to do the same. My initial contribution to Nunavut was a needs assessment for long-term care of elders. It was really a humbling experience because I came face to face with the challenges in accessing healthcare. Next, I moved on to an ombudsman type role, advocating for children and youth to receive essential services such as education and healthcare. Throughout this work, I saw the effects of intergenerational trauma caused by historical injustices, such as residential schools. I spoke with elders who had survived residential schools, and I spoke with the family members of people who had gone south to the TB sanitarium and didn't return. All of that taught me the importance of truth and reconciliation. So by sharing information about Nunavut and daily life there, I hope to spark conversation among those of us who aren't Indigenous and increase support for the work of truth and reconciliation. Oh, I went the wrong way. So I'm going to start. By the way, has anyone here been to Nunavut other than Donnelly? You have. Excellent. Excellent. So there are several people in the room. I'm going to invite you to fill in any gaps that I may leave in the information that I'm providing. So there are many Indigenous communities in North America, and the Inuit are one such community. They've inhabited the northern part of the continent for thousands of years. So I read somewhere that the Inuit have been in North America since when the pyramids were built in Egypt and when Stonehenge was created, as far as we can tell. So they were here a lot longer than we have been. The Inuit have faced significant challenges from colonizers, but have successfully negotiated land claims agreements that resulted in the recognition of 4 Inuit homelands. So if we start, I've got a pointer. This Inuit homeland is called Nunatsiavut. It's in northern Labrador. This is Nunavik. That is in northern Quebec. Nunavut is an Inuit homeland, but also has its own land and is self-governed, taking part of what used to be the Northwest Territories. This one I'm going to struggle with. Iqaluit is in Northwest Territories. So you may recall when this was Northwest Territories, Iqaluit, which is the capital of Nunavut, used to be Frobisher Bay. Yeah. The word Nunavut means our land in Inuktitut. And the land claims agreements provided self-governance and control over resources. And note that Nunavut is a territory, not a province. In order to create a province requires a change to the Canadian Constitution and the input of all the provinces. So this is across the top of Canada. Nunavut is 1/5 the land mass of Canada. It's so roughly 20% of Canada is Nunavut. It's 3 times the size of Newfoundland, basically. Nunavut has 25 communities. None of those communities are accessible to each other by road, and you cannot get to Nunavut from the south by road. You can only fly there. Okay, these maps are probably a little small on the screen, but I wanted to show the circumpolar maps to show the proximity of Nunavut to Northern Europe and Russia. And when someone looks at this map for the first time, it's quite an eye opener, isn't it? Because we are super close to Russia. And remember Alaska, when Sarah Palin said she could see Alaska? There's 3 geographical elements I'd like to emphasize on this map, starting with the Arctic Circle. That's this blue dotted line. So the Arctic Circle is the southernmost latitude at which there is 24-hour sunlight in the summer and 24-hour darkness in the winter. Many of the communities in Nunavut are in the Arctic Circle, and many are not. So Iqaluit, which is where I was based, was not. The second item to point out is this red squiggly line. That's called the isotherm. That means that within that area, in the hottest day of summer, the average temperature does not get above 10 degrees Celsius. Okay, the average. It does get to 21, but the average temperature is below 10 degrees. Most of Nunavut is within the isotherm. Finally, the green area is the tree line. So below the tree line are trees as we know them. Above the tree line, no trees. There's a very sparse, very low vegetation and tundra. All of Nunavut is above the tree line. There are no trees, just wide open spaces and tundra. I like maps. The purpose of this map is to talk about the flight routes. So as mentioned earlier, there's fly-in only communities. There's only one major airline that flies, and that is Canadian North. So Air Canada, WestJet, none of those airlines fly to Nunavut. We always thought it was kind of interesting that Canada's national airline did not fly to a capital city, but it doesn't. How do you get there? If you want to get to Nunavut from the south, you can go from Montreal to Kuujjuaq in northern Quebec, and then up to Iqaluit. Or you can go from Ottawa direct to Iqaluit, which is what I usually did. And that flight, if I remember correctly, is 3.5 hours. You can go from Winnipeg to Rankin Inland here on the coast of Hudson's Bay, or you can go from Edmonton up to Yellowknife and then on to Nunavut. It's quite costly to fly there. So a return flight from Ottawa to Iqaluit is roughly $1,000 to $1,700, depending on the time of year. And the flights within Nunavut amongst the communities are also quite costly. How do you get from east to west? So I was based in Iqaluit, but I had the privilege of going to 9 different communities, 9 of the 25 for work. So for example, if I wanted to go to Iqaluit, which is here in the northwest, I started in Iqaluit. I took the jet to Rankin. Rankin Inlet is a hub. It lands. Some people get on, some people get off. You go into Yellowknife. You stay the night in Yellowknife. And then you go back to the airport and you go to your final destination in the west. And to go back to Iqaluit, you reverse the process. Sometimes, if the weather's bad, you don't land in Rankin. So you either end up in Iqaluit when you didn't mean to go there, or vice versa, you end up in Yellowknife when you didn't mean to go there. So really, travel in the north can be summed up in one word: adventure. Weather delays, of course, are the main reason. And I have a ton of travel stories I could tell you, but I confine myself to one. And I'm going to tell you a story about going from Iqaluit to Kimmeroot. See that? It's right next door. It's the closest community to Iqaluit. In fact, in the wintertime, there are skidoo races between Iqaluit and Kimmeroot. So the flight is about an hour and a half in a tiny plane the size of a van with wings. It's the type of flight where all the passengers gather on the tarmac and the pilot looks at you, looks at your weight, and then seats you on the bench seats so that the weight is evenly distributed. So we flew to Kimmeroot. It was actually September, October, start of the school year. I was going into the school. We landed in Kimmeroot okay, despite the fact that I didn't know we'd landed until we landed. The snow was so thick in the air. I don't know how the pilot found the runway. We were there for a week. We did our work, went back to the airport to go back to Iqaluit. And it soon became apparent there were basically twice as many people in the airport waiting to go as there was capacity in the plane. And there's only one flight a day. So the pilot looked at us. And the reason there was so many people is a construction job had finished. And all the construction crew were from Quebec. So they were there with their big toolboxes wanting to go home to Montreal. So the pilot said, who here has a connecting flight out of Iqaluit? All the construction guys. So he said, I'm going to take these guys and their big toolboxes. That's all I can take on the plane. I'll come back for the rest of you this afternoon. Okay, please do. So off he went. We waited and waited and waited, really hoped that the weather didn't change that afternoon, but sure enough, he came back and he got us. So these aren't chartered flights. They're just scheduled flights, scheduled. So yes, travel in the Arctic is an adventure. Which way do I go? No. Yeah, I said I liked maps, right? This map is actually showing that Nunavut is divided into regions, and the purpose of that was to try to decentralize government a little bit and also to increase employment in the regions. So I'm going to pronounce these regions for you, and the only reason I can pronounce them is because I heard them pronounced every day. So there is Kikitani, Kikitani. That encompasses most of Baffin Island and the north of Nunavut. Kikitani. To the west is the Kitikmeot, and in the middle is the Kavalik. What do you think the total population of Nunavut is? It's got 1/5 of the landmass. Somebody yell out a number. Somebody said 65,000. Do I hear another number? 40,000, lower. 25. In between, it's actually 39. So whoever said 40 gets the prize. The prize is a wave from me. 39,000. What's that equivalent to in Nova Scotia, do you think? Sydney, Cape Breton. All of the population of Sydney, Cape Breton spread across 1/5 of the top of Canada. This chart just shows some of the community population sizes. And the communities are actually called hamlets, except for Iqaluit, which is a city, because it's the capital. Iqaluit has, in 2021, roughly 7,400 people. That's the size of Bridgewater or Yarmouth. The smallest community is Grise Fiord, and that is way up here. It's the northernmost community, 163 people. What's the smallest community in Nova Scotia? I had to look it up. Annapolis Royal. Annapolis Royal has roughly 500. So in order to get to that, you have to add Resolute Bay and Grise Fiord, which is these two. So basically small communities, very, very far spread out. When we talk about age, Nunavut is the youngest jurisdiction, not only in terms of being a territory, but has the youngest population. Nova Scotia, as we know, are we still the oldest, or we're among the oldest? So if you look at, sorry, I'm pressing the wrong buttons here. There. If we look at the distribution in Nunavut, 0 to 14 years, 32% of the population. But over 65, 4.4% of the population. In Nova Scotia, 14%. This number is 14%. And over 65 is 22%. So almost a quarter. So 1 in 4 Nova Scotians is 65 or older. The average age of the population in Nunavut is 28, and the median age is 25. So there's just as many people who are younger than 25 as there are older than 25. I got that right? That's the median, right? It's been a long time. What do you think that is in Nova Scotia? The average is 44 and the median is 45. 20 years difference. One of the reasons that Nunavut is such a young population, other than the birth rate is very high among young women, 15, 16-year-olds, the life expectancy is low. So the life expectancy in Nunavut is to age 70. The life expectancy in Nova Scotia is to age 80. And the life expectancy in Canada is 81.75 years. Got to get that 3/4 of a year in there. But so Nunavut's life expectancy is 10 years less than the rest of Canada. There is positive note though. The life expectancy has been increasing over the last several years. So it's going in the right direction. Yeah. I took these pictures in Iqaluit. Isn't it a beautiful place? Despite the lack of trees, or maybe because of the lack of trees. These are the seasons as we know them. They're not the seasons as the Inuit know them. So if we start with winter, whoops. Put that down. In winter, this picture it's our typical walk on Saturday mornings to the grocery store. Lots of snow and lots of cold. The spring turns very green. The ground underneath is mossy and soft, springy. The summer is very pretty. The purple sassafras flowers, they're gorgeous, but it's dry and dusty because Nunavut actually has a desert climate. So think Arizona. In the fall is when we get a bit of rain. It's September, October are the rainy times. And the colors are rich, just like the autumn colors here. Could I have the next slide, please? I'll get you guys to do it. Thanks. The Inuit think of the seasons in comparison to what can be hunted, fished, or gathered because of their connection to the land. And they are hunting it. They still are very much hunters. You can see here that roughly speaking, they divide spring. Yeah, it's the laser pointer. Bottom. Roughly spring and early spring. I mean, here in Nova Scotia, you could have like all 4 seasons in one day. We know that. But there they divide the seasons, spring and early spring. And in the West, they actually divide winter as well. You see, this ring shows the months. This outer ring is a much better representation of how the Inuit and Nunavut consider the seasons. So it's like the season of the caribou hunt, which is in the fall, the season of the berries, where that's in the summer, where you can pick berries up all the way till midnight. It's light enough. Season of the running char. And up here, for example, season of the igloo when it's cold. So this outer ring is a better representation of the seasons. And they vary as you move across Nunavut. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, these charts, they're a little busy. I included these for the stats nerds in the audience. You're welcome. This is temperature in Iqaluit, the average temperature for each month of the year, average temperature in Halifax for each month of the year. As you can see, in the summer, the average is about 12 degrees. Although when I was there, the temperature did get to 20, 21. So similar to today's weather here is one of the most hottest days in the summer in Nunavut. It's lovely. In the winter, however, the temperature average is -22 and -30 as the low. It's important to note that those are base temperatures. They're not the temperature with the wind chill. And since there are no trees, even the slightest breeze plummets the temperature. Whereas, as you know, in Halifax, okay, by the end of this, I'll have this down properly. One more. All right. It doesn't get quite as cold. The main thing to take from this chart is this. You see this line? That's 0 degrees. Most of the year, Nunavut is below 0 as compared to Halifax. Next slide, please. So what does, -30 base, -60 wind chill look like? So this is me early on in my time in Nunavut. I was in Iqaluit, which is in the west. It was February. The wind chill was -60. I didn't know. I couldn't feel a breeze, but that's what the wind chill was. It was a beautiful day. As you can see, the sun was shining, clear. So my colleague and I decided to go out and walk around the community. I had my Canada Goose down-filled jacket. I had a hat and then my hood up with my coyote fur. I had ski pants on and my fur mitt. We were out for not even 10 minutes. And my colleague looked at me and said, "Sharon, you've got frostbite on your face." So I scurried back to the hotel. And sure enough, I had frostbite just on my cheek, just underneath my glasses. As you can see, that's really the only part of me that was exposed. Frostbite has degrees of severity, just like burns do. Mine was the shallowest. And so after a few weeks, it healed. I was not left with a scar. But you do see children in the north with scars on their face from frostbite because they just play out, just like any other children, just play out and forget the time. After that, I settled on this outfit for my winter gear, and I have it with me. So this is the coat. It's fairly light. This coat was designed and hand sewn by a young Inuk woman named Victoria, who now has her own fashion business called Victoria's Arctic Fashion. I urge you to look her up on the internet. Her clothing is beautiful. In fact, she has participated as a designer in Paris Fashion Week. This was, I bought this from her home. I went to her home, tried it on in her living room and bought it. It was that easy. The coat is made of commander fabric. It is a very tightly woven cotton polyester blend. The cuffs are sealskin with the elasticized cuffs. This hood is Arctic fox, very warm. And you will notice that in the picture, the hood juts about 3 inches beyond my face, because that's the only way you can keep the wind off of your face. I'm wearing my sealskin boots. I'll just get those quickly. These are the warmest boots you will ever have. They are sealskin and fabric. There's no metal on these at all. And I also have on my sealskin mittens. So the mittens are sealskin, the body, and then Arctic fox again to keep the wind out of your wrists. The wind does not get through here. And all of this is waterproof, of course, because seals live in the water. You'll have a chance to try these on if you like at the break. With this outfit, I would walk to work, walk to the grocery store, go out to dinner, walk 30, 45 minutes in -60, no problem. Next slide, please. Okay, another chart for the stats nerds. As mentioned earlier, much of Nunavut is above the Arctic Circle. And what was the Arctic Circle? It was the southernmost latitude, of which there's 24-hour daylight in the summer and 24-hour night or darkness in the winter. Is there? We're not sure. Okay. It's not a fire alarm or anything. This is, again, Iqaluit versus Halifax, showing daylight hours and sunshine hours. Daylight hours is the time between sunrise and sunset. Sunshine hours is the time when the sun is directly hitting the earth. And that's as technical as I can get. It's very technical, but that's as far as I got. Basically, as you can see, between sunrise and sunset in Iqaluit in the summer is 20.6 hours. And in Halifax is 15.5. So think of the longest day in Halifax and add 5 hours to it. Conversely, think of the shortest day in Halifax and subtract 5 hours from it. But what does that really look like? Next slide, please. So I took these pictures in Iqaluit because remember, Iqaluit's not right in the Arctic Circle, so it doesn't have the 24-hour darkness. Whereas Grise Fiord, for example, way up in the north, does for weeks and months. But this is what the polar night looks like. This was taken on December 12th at 1 p.m. Look where the sun is on the horizon. Almost set. So you had 2 or 3 hours in the middle of the day when there was sunshine. So you went to work in the dark and you went home in the dark and you did your errands in the dark. If you needed to get outside when it was light, you went out at lunchtime, go to the post office, take a walk. Conversely, the midnight sun in the summer, this picture was taken, it's hard to see that, Canada Day, so July 1st at 11:20 p.m. So just before midnight. It was quite light. This is overlooking downtown Iqaluit. Here's what's really good about really long sunlight days. You can play baseball at midnight. You can go fishing. You can follow the fish and follow the tides. By the way, Frobisher Bay, which is where Iqaluit is, has the second highest tides after the Bay and Fundy. A lot of folks did struggle with polar night. They struggled with the long darkness. Folks also struggled with the long light. They couldn't sleep, but used blackout curtains. Personally, I can sleep anywhere, anytime, so it didn't bother me. And I really enjoyed the darkness. I found it cozy. It didn't bother me. And it's not, you know, a lot of traffic, a complicated city, and there's enough traffic. So it wasn't unsafe. Next slide, please. Okay. One of the most unique aspects of Nunavut is that there are 4 official languages. So every government publication and presentation must be done in, let me show you, that is Inuktitut, that is Inuit, French, and English. So Inuktitut is written in syllabics, not Roman orthography. The symbols were originally developed for the Cree and Ojibwe languages and adapted to the sounds of the Inuit language. Inuit, which is this second one, is a dialect mostly spoken in Western Nunavut, and it was starting to die out. So both Inuktitut and Inuit were made official languages because language preservation is very important to the Inuit. Next slide, please. All right. As you can see, the 4 white squares, rectangles, from the Government of Nunavut website, it's the same phrase. So the top left is in Inuktitut, top right is Inuit, French and English, saying building Nunavut together. You hear Inuktitut spoken in the grocery store, at the office, on the streets. So there are a few words that I'm fairly comfortable pronouncing for you, although my accent will be atrocious. So to say good morning, you say Iqaluit. To say thank you, you say, these aren't showing up, Nakarmik. Or another dialect is thank you is Kawanamik. To say what is your name, you say Kinauvi. And to say how are you is Kanawipi. I wanted to make sure that you heard Inuktitut spoken properly. So I found a really short video by a woman who works for CBC North. She's a Nook. And she explains the translation for the show that she does, which is to read the news in Inuktitut. So could we play the video, please?
Sarah Leonardis nguyunga inuktitular tariyunga CBC kunut ukyurtartumi hauta mapibalesi mayune inuktitular tarivatunga talabisa kortusanik igalakun kalunati tortune inuktitular tisiba kamatam maksimangitiareli ukatsias malutitlo takilwala mata ataw sumiluni titarausumi tam maksimayuqarpat tukiqarunirunnarman inuktituurtu uqausertait atutiqammarittuun.
Just back one, please. Thank you. Great. So that's what Inuktitut sounds like, spoken by someone whose native tongue it is. I tried to learn Inuktitut. I took a series of classes. It didn't go well. And so we'll start. I'm going to try to explain the language. I'm not a language expert, but basically there's a root word, and then you add a lot of suffixes and a lot of prefixes, each that representing a concept. So you end up with a word in Inuktitut that is super, super long and contains information and concepts that would run roughly a paragraph in English. So you'll notice here that each of these are multiple word phrases represented in Inuktitut by one word. And these are short. When I tried to learn, I did struggle because English is my first language. I did take French, but both of those are super different than the way Inuktitut is constructed. So, like I say, it didn't go well. You do hear, as soon as you step on the plane in Ottawa to go to Iqaluit, you hear Inuktitut, because the safety demonstration is given in English and Inuktitut. Because oftentimes elders who are unilingual in Inuktitut are traveling. You hear, like I say, Inuktitut everywhere, and I do miss hearing it spoken. Next question, next. My comments on politics and governance are going to be really brief. I'll start as a federal territory. You remember how big it is? Nunavut is 1/5 the size of Canada. They elect one member of parliament for Canada. So it makes it the second largest electoral district after Greenland. The latest election in 21, Lori Iqaluit of the NDP was elected to the House of Commons. From a territorial perspective, what's unique about Nunavut and Northwest Territories is that they are consensus governments. So each MLA is elected as an independent. Once the MLAs are elected, and it's usually one per community, there's a couple of communities that combine, and Iqaluit has 2 or 3, I can't remember. The members of the Legislative Assembly get together in a public forum. They choose the premier. They choose the cabinet ministers, and the premier then assigns portfolios to those cabinet ministers. There are always more regular members, so non-cabinet ministers, than there are cabinet ministers. So they sort of act like the opposition as we're used to. But there are no parties. So there's no voting as a block. There's no backbenchers. It's styled after the way that Inuit have traditionally made decisions in their communities. What I noticed right away is that the proceedings are much more civil. There is very little heckling, if any at all. They have their differences, and consensus doesn't mean unanimous. A simple majority is all that's needed for most decisions and to enact legislation, but it's just much more civil. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, it's there. Way ahead of me. I've chosen to showcase a few artifacts of Nunavut arts and culture, starting with the kulik, which is the lamp, because it's an essential element. So traditionally, the kulik or lamp was used to heat and light the home, be it an igloo or a tent. It's a small bowl-shaped container made of stone and filled with a wick that is soaked in seal oil or whale blubber. Now it's often used at the beginning of important celebrations or conferences in a ceremonial role to symbolize the presence and guidance of the ancestors. And I have a very short video to show you that demonstrates the use of the kulik. So could we play that, please? Here we go.
Do you know what a kulik is? A kulik is an Inuit traditional oil lamp. Mine is made of soapstone, and today I'm using vegetable oil, but normally seal or whale oil was used. My poker stick is made out of antler. The wick is made out of cattail. However, we use Arctic cotton up in Nunavut. Kuliks were made for heat, cooking, light, and prayer. Kuliks are often in the shape of a woman's uterus to represent life. My kulik is very small, and I use it for prayer and decolonizing. I hope I shared something new with you today. Nakame.
Always an elder and always women who light the kulik, especially for ceremonies. And there's they usually tell a story as they're lighting the kulik and keeping it lit. They will tell a story to the audience. Another, well, back one, please. Thank you. Thank you. So another aspect of Nunavut culture is the country food. So country food is the foods that are traditionally hunted, fished, or gathered. And they include whale, seal, caribou, char, trout, edible plants, and berries. Hunters still go out today and get meat to provide for their families, but also for community feasts. One of the values of the Inuit is to share resources, and to share with their families and community. This picture I took on Nunavut Day, which is July 9th. The creation of Nunavut is celebrated on July 9th, although it became a territory on April 1st, 1999. July 9th is the day of celebration. These gentlemen are cutting up caribou to share with the community. Community feasts are often held in celebration of events such as the opening of a health center, the visit of a dignitary, Christmas, that type of thing. They're held in the gymnasiums of the high school or in the community center. Another country food, dried char. So this is pitsi. When you're walking down the road in the summer, you will see the fish just hanging over the wood, drying in the sun. We often provided it for snacks to the youth when we were doing workshops. So this is what it looks like when it's given as a snack. Next slide, please. Clothing is another important aspect of Inuit culture. What I'm showing here are two main articles. One is the amauti, which is the parka that women use to carry the babies and keep them warm. I took this picture standing behind this family at the post office. Mom's got a baby down in the pouch, keeping the baby warm. This is a sealskin parka and the ever-present ski pants. Mom is also wearing the boots called kamek. You see there's sealskin, and then there's duffel inserts to keep your feet warm, and they're very intricate embroidery around the top. So that's kamek. This picture shows women with the amauti. The babies can be infants up to size toddler. And so you've got the toddler up peeking over mom's shoulder while they go for a walk. And the other two have their babies down in the pouch. These parkas are easily recognizable. They have the ruffle at the bottom and the flowered fabric. They're from the West. They're called Mother Hubbard parkas. So the only plausible explanation for that is that the parka design was brought over from Alaska to the west of Nunavut, and it got to Alaska because someone copied the Victorian England Mother Hubbard dress. Since I'm not a historian, I'm not quite sure how that all works, but that's the dots that were connected. So how many of you are wondering how mom gets the baby into the amauti if she's by herself? I wondered until I saw it done. So I found a very short video to show you. It's poor resolution because it's a very old video, but it does show the maneuver that mom does to get the baby into the pouch. So could you show the video, please? Thank you. Now, to take the baby out. The first time I saw someone do this, my heart was in my throat because they just reach back, they grab the baby and they flip it like this, if they're by themselves. That's why the practicing with a bag of flour. But they're very effective. Baby is toasty and warm, down in the pouch, not in the hood. And there is a waist, a rope, not a rope, but a braid around the waist so that baby's feet don't slide all the way down. So baby just nestles in the pouch in the back, toasty and warm. Next slide, please. Thank you. When you think of Inuit art, most people think of carvings first, but I wanted to show the soft crafts first, starting with my doll. So this is all sealskin. Front and back. He has a little pouch for his bullets. He has his drum. He has his hood. Lost his face. And he has his snow goggles. I don't know if you can see the snow goggles. So snow goggles are made from caribou antler. So they carve out the inside of the goggle to shape in the shape of an eye socket, and then cut slits for you to look out. Super, super important in the spring because the sun off the ice, the glare, will cause snow blindness. In fact, for spring, I invested in a pair of those glasses that change color. They change to sunglasses when you go outside. I forget the name of them. Transitional, thank you. So I needed those in order to walk around outside. The artists and craftsmen will come around to the office. They will come to the restaurants. They will come to the airport to sell their crafts and their art. So I purchased this in the office. I just happened to be walking through the reception area when the artist brought this guy in, and I snagged it because I didn't think that it would still be available by the time he got back to my office at the back of the building. You got to be quick. What have I got next? This is another doll. I bought this doll when I was out west. How can you tell that it's from out west? The Mother Hubbard parka. Yeah. Do you recall the hammock, the sealskin boots, and they had embroidery around the cuff of the duffel? The seamstresses and Inuit seamstresses are very talented when it comes to embroidery. And so this is a ptarmigan, but this is all embroidered. And this is a felt. They work a lot in felt. This is a felt polar bear, and there's embroidery across the top. These I purchased from the museum in Iqaluit, but they're very good examples of the embroidery. There are much bigger pieces, particularly in the airport and in the Legislative Assembly. There are embroidery pieces that are panels that are 10, 12 feet long, all hand embroidered. Next slide, please. Now we get to the carvings. So when we think of Inuit carvings, we say soapstone, right? And some of the original carvings were soapstone, which I'm told is crumbly and soft. And it's from a certain area of Nunavut. But many different types of stone are used. So this one is serpentine stone, this narwhal. And you can see it's got a greenish tinge, and it's much harder than the soapstone. But now we say soapstone carvings as a generic term, just like we say Xerox for printers. But art experts, not me, can tell where a carving is from in Nunavut by what stone was used to carve it. I put the clay carving from Rankin Inlet here. I purchased this in Rankin Inlet at a little gallery because Rankin is the only place where carvers use clay. instead of stone. So the fact it's clay should have given me a hint when I packed it to bring it back to Iqaluit, because clay is much more fragile than stone. But it was smashed when I got back to Iqaluit. Totally my fault because I didn't pack it properly. Carvers also use caribou bone and caribou antlers. This little piece I purchased in Iqaluit. And when you come up to look at it, you'll see that there is a lot of very fine etching on both sides of this piece. Inuit art often represents nature, the animals that are hunted and the fish, and also spiritual and mythology. There's a very rich mythology and spirit stories in Inuit culture. And this is one of the pieces that represents that. And finally, this is a whale rib. And these, the polar bears with the hunter, I could never decide if the hunter was following in their footsteps for safety or was hunting them. This is super light. It's just completely a bone. It's in two pieces because I dropped it and broke it. If you're sensing a theme here, you'd be right. So that's just an example of the various things that can be carved. I have a video for you. I chose this video to show you for a couple of reasons. One, it's a youth who's carving. He's 13, very talented. Two, it shows a good representation of life in a community, in this case in Cape Dorset. I should mention that in recent years, some of the communities in Nunavut have replaced their English names with Inuktitut names. Cape Dorset is no longer called Cape Dorset. It has an Inuktitut name. I have not heard it said, so I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it. And in this video, it's still called Cape Dorset. Could you play the video, please?
David Pola ngazonga, certina kago hatonga, sanangoka amalote taktuga kaviasatonga. My name is David Pola. I am 13 years old. I love to carve and draw. I lived in Cape Dorset my whole life. My favorite in school is art and gym. I don't remember the time that I didn't like art. I love to draw on my sketchbook. I love to draw a bowhead whale. And I love to draw walrus because my dad goes walrus hunting a lot. I learned how to carve from my dad. My dad made this. I hope he caught one. He's out hunting right now. If he caught one, I want if it climbs in the belly. The first thing that I carve is an Inukshuk. Inukshuk represents Nunavut.
David, stone dog up.
People chooses a stone. They look for sizes and colors. I'm thinking to make something with this. Inukshuk. Some older people uses a grinder. and I use a saw and filer. First, I make a line, and then I saw some of it. Usually in a chicks, there's six rocks. Oh, almost. It looks like a human, but made of rocks. And this much more to go. Carved a bird and a milkshake and a fish. And now sand it. Sanding is my favorite part. And I'm gonna have to polish it. I wish it was summer. I would carve more. 6 or 7 years old, I drew a man trying to catch a seal. Some person said, "You're good," and then just started to practice more. Yeah, it's done. In the future, I like to be an artist. Making art is fun, and I want to keep doing it.
Now, I don't know if you could see very well, but the drawings that he was doing were quite representative of the drawings that are Inuit, Nunavut Inuit. Could I have the next slide, please? And the final part of arts that I wanted to showcase is printmaking. And you see the print on the left is similar to what David was drawing. The one on the left is just on, it's pen and ink on Bristol board type. I purchased that in a bar. And I didn't get that one framed, but this one is similar to the others on the screen. They're silk screen prints on fabric. These are, there are a couple of artists in particular that do these artworks. One is that is locally known as Smiley, and Smiley often goes to the airport to greet you. And so I made sure to get one of Smiley's silk screens from each year that I was there. And this is one of them. Could I have the next slide, please? All right, that brings us to intermission. So there's a few things to talk about. First of all, intermission will be 15 or 20 minutes. Do we still have that amount of time? Yeah, okay. During intermission, feel free to come up, look at the items more closely, try on the items of clothing if you wish, the hat, the mitts, the coat. Then when we come back, I'll talk about the way that Nunavut gets supplies from Southern Canada. And I will talk about, and then I will open the floor to questions. So again, I'll stay up here. So if you have any questions about any of these items while you're examining them, I'll be happy to answer them. But other than that, I'll see you back here in about 20 minutes. Do you want me to announce it? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start in 1 more minute. How are we doing for time? Thank you, Bill. My microphone on? It is? Start again. Oh, you pay attention to Donna Lee, but not to me, okay? We know who's the boss here, the alpha female. Okay. So the next section of the presentation concentrates more on daily life in Nunavut, particularly in Iqaluit, which is where I was based. And I'm going to talk a little bit about getting supplies up from Southern Canada and then open for questions. So I'm going to start by saying that, of course, there are grocery stores, multi-purpose stores really, in all the communities. Iqaluit had 3. Some communities just have 1. So in these stores will be your usual groceries. They're like a little Walmart. There will be clothing, household goods, skidoos, traps, basically whatever's needed. But of course, selection isn't very good and the cost is super high. And I'm sure you've all seen media reports about the cost of groceries in Nunavut, in most of the north, actually. When you think about what's in the grocery store, start with the perishables, eggs, cheese, meat, vegetables. All of those are flown up every day at added cost, of course. And the picture on your left, yes, is of the airport. I, for a while, lived quite close to the airport and I watched that cargo jet come in every day. It would get unloaded in about an hour and a half and go on out again. When the weather was good, every day, cargo jet. When the weather was bad, no cargo. So then the shelves in the stores got a little empty. No milk, no eggs, no bread, no butter. Often the cargo jet also brought the packages from online shopping. So remember I said it was expensive and limited selection in the stores. So we became very proficient at online shopping, and one of the favorites was Amazon, because Amazon delivers for free to Iqaluit, not to the rest of the communities, but yes, to Iqaluit. It's not 1-day service. It's not 2-day service. It's 2-week service, but it gets there. So remember the picture I showed you of the family waiting in line at the post office to pick up their parcel? Because you get, first of all, there's no mail delivery to the houses. You all have a post office box. You get a card in the post office box saying you have a parcel. So the next day you go to the post office warehouse to pick up your parcel. You look in that warehouse, it might as well be an Amazon warehouse. Well, Amazon and Victoria's Secret. But that's what comes up on the jet. I was told that shipping used to also be free from Walmart online shopping until somebody ordered a baby barn that was delivered on the cargo jet. And suddenly free shipping from Walmart ended. But so far as I know, Amazon still ships for free. But what if you need furniture? What if you need a new couch? What if you need a new sink? What if you need to repair your house? What if you need to build a house? What if you're the government and you need to build a hospital or a school or maintain the school? What if you have a large family? You can't use Amazon for that. So instead, there is the annual sea lift. So this is the process. In the spring, late winter, early spring, March, April, folks who can go south for their sea lift shopping trip. They go to Costco, they go to Walmart, they go to the liquor store, they go to the car dealership, they go to the furniture store. They spend a year in order to get a year's worth of supplies or the big items. So it's not uncommon to walk into Costco and walk out with $9,000 worth of goods for a whole year. Go to the car dealership, you have the car delivered to the docks. There are freight forwarding companies that will deliver to the docks in Ottawa or Montreal, for example. Your goods, your year's supply of canned beans and macaroni and toilet paper and paper towel, your new baby supplies, if you're having a baby, your crib, everything gets packaged up in a wooden crate and put on the ship. The ship starts to travel north when the ice starts to open up, and an icebreaker goes with them. And they've only got a very short period of time to deliver the goods. The ship goes to every single community in Nunavut, not just Iqaluit, every single one, including all the way up to Grise Fjord. Remember, that's way at the top. So keep in mind that you've got to plan ahead, right? And the government has to plan ahead. If the government thinks they're going to build a school, they need everything they need for that school ordered and put on the ship in time. So I'm going to show you, next slide, please. I'm going to show you a CBC documentary / reality show called High Arctic Haulers. Has anyone seen this? Yes. You have seen it. Oh, you just stole my thunder. Did you enjoy it? Loved it. Thank you. All right, for those of you who've not seen it, we're going to let you into the club. High Arctic Haulers is by the CBC. It's a series of 6 shows where they did actually follow a ship's crew as they went up to the various communities. Keep in mind, it's a reality show / documentary. So remember I said that it's time sensitive and very important to get items to the communities. Well, if you look at the blurb for High Arctic Haulers, it's shipping crews brave treacherous conditions to get life's necessities to the communities at the top of the world. It's an obstacle course of a delivery route, battling tides, sea ice, and brutal weather. For the people who live in Canada's high Arctic, there is no option. The haul must get through. There's a smidge of over-dramatization here. However, it's very well done. So I'd like to play the trailer video, please.
Near the top of the world,
-40 is normal.
there's a place so remote,
We almost didn't make it.
only the toughest dare stay.
I love it. I'll die here.
To live in the high Arctic,
Gotta go that way, right?
you must be resilient, resourceful,
It's a hostile environment.
and willing to beat the odds. Once a year, the Arctic gambles on a fleet of cargo ships, a sea lift,
Without the sea lift, I don't know if I would even be staying here.
Gusting to 72.
that chases the retreating ice.
If the sea lift doesn't come in, what you see is basically what we're going to have. Empty shelves for a whole year. This is not looking good.
We have a lot of places to be. We have to go as fast as we can.
Their window is dangerously brief.
We see the big patch of ice, we leave it to starboard. Okay.
It's a perilous dash north.
Watch out!
How do we find the ice? We smell it.
A piece like this, easy gonna rip the ship apart.
We just hit ice.
It's a big problem.
This season, they must move more cargo to more places than ever before.
You gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta go, because winter is coming.
The rewards? Yeah, there it is! Impossible to measure.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Putting a face to that piece of cargo, put it in perspective for me.
On ship and on shore.
Damn it.
They will do whatever it takes
son of a...
Because to survive up here, the haul must get through.
It's the high Arctic. It's completely unpredictable.
They were excited that the ship is here, the ship is here. When the ship appears in the harbor, excitement goes through the town. The energy is palpable because it's like Christmas. The barge will come in, the ship will come in, offload onto barges and bring everything onto the beach. Notice I didn't say dock, beach. Up until recently, none of the communities had docks. I understand that Iqaluit just opened a deep sea dock. And so they don't unload on the beach anymore. What do you do when your crate comes, right? The crate gets taken to and lands outside your house or outside your apartment building, and there it is. So somebody gets a crowbar, pries open the crate, and you're looking at a year's supply of canned beans and a year's supply of liquor and a year's supply of whatever. Where do you put that? So every house and apartment is designed to include what's called a sea lift room. And they range in size from, a pretty big closet to an entire room with shelving units built in usually. And so you and your family members move everything out of the crate, a year's supply of everything, put it on the shelves. You are your own inventory manager at that point. Some families use sea cans to store their goods in. I can't overestimate how important the sea lift is to a community, but I also need to point out that there are inequities built into that system. How many people have the cash flow to go to Costco and spend for a year's worth? Or to go to the furniture store and pay on top of the cost of the furniture, the cost to get it to the docks, get it shipped up or boxed up and get it shipped up, right? So it all adds to the expense. Not everyone is able to do that. So they end up purchasing from the local store. On a more positive note, there is an amazing reuse and recycle community in all of the communities, to the point where if you have something that you don't want or can't use anymore, and you live in an apartment building, you just take it down to the lobby. And 15 minutes later, it'll be gone. Personally, I picked up a bread maker in the lobby one day. Worked beautifully, no problem at all. There's also in Iqaluit a little volunteer-run thrift store where you can donate your items. Usually when at the end of the school year, when the teachers leave, the thrift store gets well stocked. Because instead of packing it up to take it out, you just take it to the thrift store. And then someone in the community can, buy a really nice hoodie for $1 instead of trying to buy that hoodie for $30 at the store. So there's a very, very active recycle and reuse. Sometimes even that isn't enough. And so you can drop off clothing to the school or to the medical boarding homes. So when people go to Iqaluit for medical treatments, they stay at a boarding home. They don't have enough clothing. There will be a box in the lobby of the boarding home, and you can just take the clothing out of there. Same with the schools. When I traveled on duty travel to the various communities, I always took with me, all of our staff did. We took extra clothing, we took socks, we took hats and mitts, boxes of crackers, boxes of little cheese snacks. There's usually a big box in the lobby of the high school. We just put everything in there. Often the principal's offices in the schools had a little pantry, and the kids could just go and help themselves to snacks. So there's quite a community of sharing and recycle and reuse, because not everybody can do the sea lift. I'm going to, there were two other videos there, but I'm not going to show them. Sorry, Bill. I'm not going to show them because I wanted to leave time for questions. What I'd like to do is open up for questions. If I welcome questions not only on everything that I've talked about, but if there's something I haven't talked about that you're interested in, feel free to ask a question about that. The folks on Zoom, it's my understanding that if you have a question, you can type it into the chat box or the question and answer box, and then one of the tech people here will read out the question so that the folks on Zoom and the folks here in Hope Hall can listen to the question. So who would like to start? Go ahead.
Are there any remains of the dew line?
So the question is, are there any remains of the dew line? Yes, I was rarely far enough north for the whole dew line. However, just outside of Iqaluit, there was a remnant. Now, remember, so the dew line stands for distant early warning. Is that correct? That was replaced by the northern something.
Back in the 1950s, maybe. My husband was on the worked on the dew line, so I think that would have been late 1950s. I'm trying to think how old he would have been, just as a young fella. So back then it was radar. He was a radar technician. So I think they're thinking of bringing it back because of Russia.
Right.
But using different technology, I assume.
Right. So it's my understanding. So your husband worked there in the 50s and it was radar, is my understanding. The dew line itself has been replaced by another type of northern early warning system. I can't remember the name of it right now, but there are archaeological remnants of the dew line in Iqaluit. There's one of those, it looks like a dome. Yep. Yes, it's still there.
I have a photograph of that.
You have a photograph of the dome. Yeah, it's still there. Question? There's a microphone coming for you.
Oh. I'm wondering about diet.
Diet, yes.
Because, I mean, you're not going to grow fruit and vegetables up there, are you?
No.
So what happens to all the minerals and vitamins that you need?
So the question is about diet because you can't grow vegetables in the north. There have been attempts to have greenhouses. So Iqaluit has a greenhouse run by volunteers, and I know Nunavut has a greenhouse as well. But of course, the growing season is so short. You rely on cargo to bring to the store the fruits and vegetables that you need. But nutrition and food insecurity are challenges, for sure. Yeah. Are there questions on Zoom, Bill? Yeah. We're just waiting to get a question from Zoom.
There is a question coming in from online. A question, is there any immigration going to Nunavut?
That's an excellent question. Thank you. So the question was, is there any immigration to Nunavut? So, yes. And from when I was in Iqaluit, which is not that long ago, there were folks coming in from Africa to take positions in social work and in the schools. So, of course, Canadians from the South go up, but they're usually pretty transient. I do know folks that have stayed there for 20, 30 years. They marry in Inuk, they raise their family there, but others are like me. I was just there for 5 years. So I wouldn't call that immigration, but there are, I know someone from Eritrea who works there. Someone from, anyway, it's various African countries the folks go to Nunavut. It's pretty much a shock at first, but you adapt. Another question?
Yes, another question. This person says that they know a young man who taught school at Cape Dorset and Iqaluit for 3 years. I know it is a complicated situation, but it seems that education, at least the Southern kind of education, is not valued. I think most of that is tied to a lack of opportunity in these small communities. What are your thoughts on this, and what might be done to try and help these communities better thrive?
So did everyone hear that? Okay. So excellent question. Thank you. This is after my near and dear to my heart. So part of the work that I was doing was an advocate for children and youth with an ombudsman's office called the Representative for Children and Youth. Our work was based on the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. And there are 30 some articles that are rights that children, that rights concerning children specifically. Canada is a signatory to this United Nations Convention. So the government of Nunavut had an obligation to support these rights. One of the rights is the right to education. The challenge with providing education in Nunavut, there are several challenges. One, the goal is to provide education in English and Inuktitut. And that is very challenging to provide in order to find teachers who are Inuktitut speaking. Many of the teachers are from the South. Again, they're transient. There aren't as many teachers who were born and raised in Nunavut. Think of the population of Nunavut. It's not that big. The cost of providing an education, of maintaining the schools, of hiring teachers, retaining teachers is also a challenge. The opportunities for Inuit youth are few and far between when you look at it from a Western or a Southern perspective. Many Inuit youth in Nunavut walk with one foot in each world. Their traditional world and the world of the South, which is the education system that they're in. There is a shift, especially among young people, back to traditional hunting. But the challenge is hunting is very expensive. Skidoos are expensive, rifles are expensive, and bullets are expensive. And even seal hunting, because of the European attitudes towards seal hunting is not that cannot support families like it used to. So the youth are in an education system that mainly prepares them for a completely different lifestyle with limited opportunities. And the fellow who asked the question knew of someone who taught school in Iqaluit. Iqaluit is one of the more traditional communities in Nunavut. It's more connected to the land. There's more hunters. So there's a really big disconnect between the school system, the Western school system, and the way that the Inuit traditional live. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Oh, there's a question at the front here.
Can you comment at all about the Inuit in Alaska? Are things better for them, worse for them? Is there any relationship?
Okay, so the question is, can I comment on the Inuit where, sorry?
In Alaska.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I don't know. I've never been to Alaska. I've never worked there. So I really wouldn't feel comfortable commenting on that. Question at the back here.
It's not really a question, but I was in Greenland and the Inuit in Greenland, because Greenland is, I think was Sweden that had it for a while or whatever.
Denmark.
They put a lot of money into them and they're quite well advanced and their communities are thriving. It's just a difference in perspective. And Denmark poured the money into it so they could claim the land, right? And keep it.
again, the media portrays many of the social issues in Nunavut and among the Inuit, but you know, they're thriving as well. Yes, there are challenges, but there are also aspects of community that are thriving. The language, especially the Inuit language, is my understanding is coming back strong. The youth interest in maintaining traditional ways and traditional ways of thinking is very, very strong. So I don't want to speak for the Inuit. I'm not Indigenous. I can't speak for them. But as an outsider looking in, to me, it looks more hopeful and more positive.
There's one more question coming in from online.
Online?
This person asks, what are your thoughts on the impacts of cruise ship tourism on the Inuit?
So thank you for that question. I'm not familiar with that area of life in Nunavut. I do have a family member who worked in ecology and with wildlife, and I wish they were here because they could answer that question much better. All I can say is I am aware that there are issues with respect to cruise ships coming up to the north. And there's a cruise ship, for example, that goes up to Pond Inlet through the Northwest Passage. And the concerns are that, well, there's many concerns, ecological concerns, economic concerns. I don't feel confident commenting on the details of those issues or the suggested solutions because it's not my area of work when I was there. So.
Thank you for your answer. There's another.
I went on a cruise with Adventure Canada.
Yeah.
And it's a smaller cruise ship.
Yeah.
It's a smaller cruise ship, and it's actually a family-run cruise ship that's been going for a number of years, and they actively involve the Inuit for people that work on the cruise ships. Not like they're not doing the cooking; they're telling the people on the cruise ship how they live their life. They're telling them, educating about their problems that they have. And many of them are full-time employees that go, and they have different cruise lines that go from right through the Northwest Passage, or they'll go over through Baffin Island and then over to Ponds Inlet, over to Greenland. That's the one that I was on, I think. But they are very much committed, like they are committed to when we stop, if we stop in a community, we give back to the community. They bring food in for the community when they stop. If they have room on the ship, they'll bring supplies in and try to help the communities as we visit them as much as possible. And quite often all the kids will be able to see you and meet with you and all that sort of thing. But I mean, positive, negative, I think some of the kids need some exposure because some of them have never been out of the communities at all.
Yeah, the thing that gets kids out of the communities is sports. So if they play on a sports team. Speaking of sports, has anyone seen the movie called The Grizzlies? You've seen that. So it's about a lacrosse team in Iqaluit. Although it's a movie, it's fictional, it was very realistic. And I highly recommend watching that as well. It's available on iTunes, I know that. I'm not sure where else, but it's called the Grizzlies because that was the name of their lacrosse team. And that shows the impact on the kids when they get out of the community, for sure. The other one is hockey. A lot of kids on the hockey teams, that's how they travel and see the rest of the communities.
There's another question from outside. Is there a large discrepancy between the standard of living of the local people and the outsiders?
Oh dear. Yes, very good question. And there is often a very large discrepancy between outsiders being folks who go up to work from the south in government, mostly in government, so government workers, and those Nunavut who've been born and raised there who don't work in government. There is a discrepancy in salary and in living, standard of living, for sure. And Iqaluit is a government town. It's the capital. And so it's quite different than the other communities, but I was privileged to be able to go out to various communities and see. One of my great blessings in life was to go to a community many communities where I was in the minority. And so I could see what it felt like. And I was always treated with kindness and respect, but still I was the minority. We got another one?
I think it's
Oh, Donnelly's, okay.
back to me. Thank you. You can hear me? Yes. Perfect. Okay. So Sharon had a travel story, right? Here's mine. You ready? Okay. So I'm 7 days in Iqaluit. I'm only supposed to be there for 5. Yeah, nothing's flying. We're 7 days in, right? Getting a little tired, maybe a tinge cranky, and there's definitely no clean underwear, right? I'm telling you. So I don't know, about 2, 3 in the afternoon, 2 guys working for one of the mining companies come by. They're pounding on the doors, right? Canadians flying, right? So everybody like me who's flying Canadian North, right? We're grabbing bags and we're just hitting to the airports, right? Because they're getting out. Apparently they've got sat phones. So they figure, who needs GPS? Really? Satellite phone will work. So we're at the airport, right? And we're layered. We've got the thermal underwear. We've got the parkas. It's minus 51 with the wind chill, right? We're tired. We're cranky. We're cold. But when you fly Canadian North, you fly with liquor. Yeah. First time I flew Canadian North, they said, would you like a Canadian North coffee? Special coffee. I said, do you have decaf? They said, absolutely, we do. You get a cup of coffee, right? And it's tall. You know what I mean, don't you, Sharon? Sharon knows. It's tall. It's got whipped cream on the top. And you think, oh my God, isn't this great? And you take your first sip and you realize that 2/3 of it is Grand Marnier. Yeah, right. And that's free. God bless Canadian North, right? So we're on the plane, we're flying. They warned us we could be stranded another week. So those of us flying Canadian North are feeling good. We're starting to get a tiny bit warm, and we're flying into Ottawa, right? And the connection is short. So we land in Ottawa. There's 5 or 6 of us going on to Halifax, right? Some guy we don't know says, take my bag, I'll run ahead. Bless his heart. He sprinted down the airport, told the Ottawa flight from Ottawa to Halifax to hold up. There were 5 more people coming. Sure enough, we all arrived. They've held the plane a few minutes waiting for us. We're making our way down. So we're on the plane, right? So here you are now. You're not in minus 51 anymore, but you've still got the thermal underwear. You've still got the parka. You've still got the hat. You've still got the mitts. And now you're just, now you're hot and you're bothers, right? And you'd really like your own bathroom. You know what I mean? So some poor woman, this lovely woman is sitting beside me. She's for the first time landed in Canada, and she's going to Halifax, bless her heart. And she kind of looks at me because I'm a cross between the Michelin Man and, Frosty the Snowman kind of thing. And she said, was it cold? I said, yeah. I said, it was minus 51. She said, Celsius? I said, yeah, no, it was very cold. And now I am admittedly a little cranky. She said, do you think it'll be that cold in Halifax? I said, probably. So why not? So, and I think the thing that Sharon has done so well is she has highlighted the contrast between life up north and life down south, right? And the beauty and joy and wonder of that life. We finally land in Halifax, and man, I'm hot, right? Like I got clothes that I will never wear again, right? And I get off in Halifax, and there's this period where you've got this culture shock. You're walking down getting off the plane, and you're walking down the hallway in the Halifax airport, and somebody walks by you and you think, no, that's not right. What's not right? And you keep going, and somebody else walks by and you think, nope, still not right. And then you realize they're in shorts. And it's the end of March. Apparently, we made the CBC and the CTV news that night because we had the highest temperature on record in Canada. They're in shorts and T-shirts. and the Michelin Man is walking down, right? So that is my travel story. The thing that happens to you, and I think this happened less to Sharon than it did to those of us who flew in and out on a regular basis. But there is part of your heart that when you're leaving says, oh, thank God, right? Starbucks, right? And oh, right, all of those. And there's the floors don't tilt, because in Iqaluit, the floors tilt because the frost tilts everything. Oh, to be able to walk straight down. It's a blessing, really. But what happens to you when you get back and you land after about 2 to 3 weeks in, you think, geez, it's dark. Wouldn't be dark in Iqaluit. No, I could stay up later, right? Oh, I gotta go. I could drive to Tim Hortons. Yeah, Iqaluit, I could just walk down the hall. So you begin to miss all of the things that are wonderful and truly wonderful about being up north, at the same time that you recognize that it is a significantly different way to live, a different place on every level. And I want to thank Sharon for sharing that with us today. Yeah. In my haste to tell you that,